By now you've finished your quilt top and we're ready to do our quilt borders and binding. So we are on page 66. It gives you the sizes to cut for your inner border, your outer border, and your binding. The inner border is this red, and we cut 5 1.5 by width of fabric strips. Then we cut 6 of our 4.5 by width of fabric strips of the outer border, and then our inner border is 2.25 by width of fabric strips. And first thing we're going to do is sew all of these end to end so that we make one long big one long piece. We're going to take the borders. We're going to put aside the binding for right now. We'll talk about that in a minute. The borders we're going to sew end to end. We're going to measure how long it is. Measure from the center of your quilt to the bottom. Measure through the center lengthwise. And that's going to be our 2 side pieces. And then we will measure widthwise, and we will sew those pieces, cut that in half and sew those pieces across the top. This is all for the inner border. Before we can sew these on, we have to embroider on them, do our background quilting on them. So the first thing we're going to do is sew all these end to end, the inner border and the outer border, and then we're going to prepare and get ready for doing our embroidery on them. So let me get those sewn together and I'll be right back. Okay, we have our pieces, and we're going to need to do, I think I maybe said do the outer border first, but to embroider, but we need to do the inner border first, because when we add these inner border, that changes your measurement for your outer border, because it's going to add an 1.5 inches. It's going to add 1.25 inches to each side of your quilt. So I have measured my quilt, and my quilt lengthwise, because we're going to add these left and right pieces first. Lengthwise, it is 46 3/4. I guess I'll talk to you about when I've sewn these together. I do a butt joint. I don't like the miter joint in a border because it gives too much pull and give, and then you don't get a good straight border. It might be pulled just a little bit on one end or the other, or stretched just a little as you're ironing it. I like to do just the straight joints. When you're sewing all these together, make sure you cut off all your selvages. The selvage is woven differently than the rest of the fabric, and it will pucker your fabric. It will do terrible things to your project. You get it through and you'll watch it and you'll think, oh my gosh, what did I do? And it's just because the selvage is just different. It's what holds it on the loom when they're weaving the cloth. So we are going to measure 2 pieces that measure. We're going to add 2 inches to our length and width measurement. And we do that because when we're quilting, sometimes that draws up just a little bit as it's quilting. The quilting pulls the fabric in just a little. If you put on the fusible interfacing on the back, it helps keep it from doing that. So that is your call if you want to put that on here. They recommend it. I'm not going to do it at this time. So you do what you want. Alright, so my measurement was 46 3/4, so I need to cut my piece 48 3/4. And I marked it somewhere. In doing it in the sections and then cutting all the pieces, you see that my joins are randomly in there. They won't be in the same place, which is good. So I am going to, and I did measure to make sure I had enough for the width also. I think that's where I was doing it. Yes. So I'm going to cut this here so that I have two pieces that are 48 3/4, and that's what mine measures. Your might be a little bit different because of the way you sew your seams or your sewing machine sews. So I'm going to cut that one in half. So I have my two side pieces here, and then I'm going to cut the other piece into two. It's 31 for me, for my quilt. The width across is 31.5. So I'm going to cut it at 33.5. Make sure I got that measurement right. I don't think I marked it so good. And if you get it just a smidge longer, it's okay. That's just insurance that you don't run short at the end. And we'll have a little bit left over in case we need it. And all we would have to do is splice that in. Sew another piece onto it. Okay. This is my extra I'm going to put aside. These are my side pieces. And these are my top and bottom pieces. Here. This is important because of the way we're going to stitch them out. So I'm going to hook my fabric and I will be right back. Alright, I've pulled up my embroidery files, excuse me, and we're looking for the 102 border Christmas 4. Now I have my 8x12 hoop, and we're doing we want a finished size of 1 inch. So I am going to do the 1x12. I'm going to set it. We're not changing anything. We're just going to embroider. If I can get it to touch. Okay. And that's what we're going to do on our little border. So I am going to go ahead and stitch out the, you probably could combine the two in one, but we'll just do one at a time. Alright, I have printed out the pages from the CD that you got, and it is the pages that talks about the borders and the hooping the borders. I'm not sure what it says. Anyway, we're on page 4 of that part, and you're going to cut a new batting for each hooping. What we're going to do is we're going to stitch our batting down like we have done So this is the first hooping that we're going to do. Alright, we've trimmed our border to the exact length that we need. And we've sewn all the pieces together, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay. If it will help you to print that out, then definitely do that. So I'm going to lay this in here. And we're going to stitch this out. It's going to be just like the way we have done all the blocks. Okay, as before, we're going to trim our batting close to the line, the stitching line. So let me get that trimmed, and then I'll come right back and show you the rest. Now it says to stitch the fabric placement line. So let's go ahead and do that. Now it tells us to take tape and roll it up, but we want the sticky side outside. So we're going to put that right above here, and one right below. It's sticking to my fingers. Okay. And I'll show you that one where I have it at the top, and I also have it here at the bottom, and it's sticking to my hook also. Now we want to put our strip of fabric, we want it 2 inches above, a 1/2 inch above the top edge of the batting. So we're going to go up about a 1/2 inch, and we want our edges to be exactly on this line that we just stitched down. Okay, so we've got it right a 1/2 inch above the batting and stuck to the bottom, and we want this line right over here that we stitched down, and here we want it to be right in the middle of those. It says to smooth the fabric over the roll tape and stitch the fabric basting stitch, but this stitch will be sewn into the seam, so let's do that. Now it says to change the desired color. I'm still going to continue using my white. And then we're going to stitch our border. And make sure the next page doesn't have something. Okay. So I'll be back when this finishes stitching. Okay, we finished embroidering that part. The first section of this. Now we still have our long tail just draping over the edge of it, waiting to do the rest of it. So I'm going to take this out of the hook. I'm going to trim away the extra batting, not batting. We're not trimming fabric, nor are we trimming batting. We'll just trim away the extra stabilizer here. Rehoop with new stabilizer, and I'll be right back. Okay, now we're ready to do our next part. I've trimmed away all the extra stabilizer. Now it says to lay on a flat surface, and we want that folded back on itself, just like this. Right at that line that where we tack down our batting. And hang on to that for a second. We're going to go ahead and do our placement line again for the next set of batting. We're going to put our batting there, do our tack down of our batting, and then I'm going to trim it. And I'll be back when I get that part done. Okay, I've gone ahead and stitched my fabric placement line. I'm going to put my tape back up here on the top and on the bottom. And remember, this tape can be used several times before you have to get any more. It's sticky enough. Alright, now we've folded back our piece. We want our unembroidered piece to be laying on top of this. We're folding on that tack down line, and we want to align it with the top of this up here. Press it down onto this tape so that holds it. And we want to make sure that we are perfectly straight all the way down to here, to the bottom. And we're going to leave our extra. We're not going to see it. We still got a little tail of extra. We'll have to come back and do this a third time. So now let's do our basting line. Make sure we got everything just right. going to stitch the rest of our design down here. Okay, we finished embroidering. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to trim this out, trim all our extra stabilizer away. We're going to rehoop the fabric. We're going to move it to the top like we did, and just continue until we get to the end of it. And then every piece is going to be done the same way. We're going to do both top pieces, both side pieces, and we're going to sew those on using 1/4 inch onto our quilt. You'll sew the side pieces first, and then you'll sew the top and bottom pieces. Then you'll measure for your 4.5 inch outer border and get that measurement, add 2 inches, cut those pieces and embroider them the same way that we've done this. All of it is done the same way. It may take a little bit of time, but it's all done exactly as I've lined it out here. And then you're going to sew that border piece on. And the way that I think that we're going to tack these pieces together, let me get a small sample, and I'll show you what I'm thinking of doing. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to pretend that this is our quilt top. And I will put batting behind it. This is our pieced quilt top. We put our batting behind it. We put our backing on it. And now I'm going to use the feature. Let me get you over here. In your sewing mode. And you're going to find it at the end of all your buttonhole stitches. It's where it stitches the button on. And it'll tell you to use the button holding foot, but I'm not. I'm just using a regular foot. But that's the one that I'm using, is the one that sews the buttons on. And what I want to do is basically tie the quilt with this little buttonhole stitch. Let's see, I didn't stitch on there. And what I'm going to randomly do is go to intersections of the quilt and do this little button tying, button placement, or holding on, I don't know what you call it. You'll have to go back and trim up everything. But I think it will look nice and neat. Stitching the ditch is very hard to do without it being seen. And this is all you're going to see on the back. The backing of our, if you got the kits, or whatever backing you chose, this is the color you would see. If you wanted, say you had a green backing and you don't want to see white on it, then put you a green bobbin in. A bobbin the color of this, and then you won't ever see that. It's going to hold it together for you. It's not going to move. We're quilted all over the whole front of the quilt anyway, and you won't see it on the front. And I think if you can do it randomly around the quilt, you can set a pattern if you're OCD, like I probably will set a pattern. But just, I think these little tack downs will hold it good. It ties it on both sides, on the front and the back, because you can trim off all these little things on the back too. It holds your buttons on really well, so it's going to hold this quilt together really well. But that was the easiest way I came up with tacking the quilt together. I'm going to use it as a wall hanging. I'm not going to use it as a quilt. If you're going to use it as a quilt, you might want to stitch in the ditch so that it holds it together. But I didn't really want all those patterns on the back of this, and it will be just little dots like that. So once you get all of that done, trim your backing, trim it up after you've gotten it tacked in or quilted, however you choose to do it. And then we're going to put our binding on just like we always do, or however your usual way is to put binding on. I don't do hand binding, I do machine binding. So that will be up to you how to do that. Everybody knows how to put binding on. I'm not going to take up your time telling you things that you already know. If you don't know, then contact me and I will do a video for you. But that's the way we're going to finish it up. So please show me your pictures when you get through with yours. I know it's the 7th of December, so I know we're a little behind here. But I appreciate y'all sewing along with me and sticking with me, and thank you very much.